Hey!
I'm not sure we're ever going to recover.
That's how we're gonna start, just blasting out our audience's eardrums.
I'm so sorry.
Hey!
Hey!
As long as we're not blasting out any other parts of their body like you intend to, you fucking pervert.
Ho, ho, ho.
That's what they're gonna be saying when I'm done with them.
Is that a book about dolphins behind you, Michael?
Is it?
I think we really woken something inside of him.
Actually, the dolphins have awakened inside of him, but...
They come in him, he come on floor.
I think that after last week's episode, I've actually had people write and say, forget about Hitler, Michael is the real monster.
I've heard the same thing.
Yeah. So.
I am, according to Courtney's canon, responsible for 9/11, right? That's what we said?
Uh-huh.
Amongst other
and
things.
Also, just like Hitler, you strike fear through the French coastline. So, it's a beautiful thing. And,
Man.
speaking of things that cause fear and panic, Heil come slingers, and welcome to another disgruntled installment of this, the Disinformed podcast. I'm Shane.
I'm John.
I'm Michael.
I'm Courtney.
Still in under 2 minutes, so, I've met the mandate for this evening.
Thank you.
Huzzah!
I do try.
Despite my efforts, yeah.
Like Anakin Skywalker before me. You will try. Don't try podcasting this evening, Anakin. I have the high ground.
How are you guys feeling, Shane? You and lovely Melissa. Doing
Well,
all right?
Melissa is on. She's on death's door. Her life was in your hands, dude. And
Oof.
yeah, she's not feeling great. But that's somewhat par for the course. Speaking to the converted here, I know Courtney can relate. It's just kind of. I'm another degree of shitty this evening.
It just
Courtney,
lingers.
you and Jonah, all right?
Jonah's great. I'm still coughing. It's
Okay.
great.
Michael, how many beers are you in?
Just like 2.
Oh, dude, same. Cheers.
I tempered myself after the hey!
So you won't be as funny
figured it
this
wasn't
week then? Is that
necessary.
what you're saying?
I'm testing it. I don't want to rationalize my alcoholism, but I'm going to rationalize my alcoholism tonight.
Jonah was
bet
like, how drunk is Michael? And I was like, well, he does say on the episode.
Allow me to answer that question.
Transfer! Cloth hunger!
I bet you won't chug your beer right now before we get into the gritty of it and open up another one. Bet you won't.
I only brought one up here. No.
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 No lemon pledge.
No pussy.
Stop. No pussy.
You gotta have a little sass on the end of that.
No pussy.
All right.
Oh, do
salt
not.
and pepper.
Yeah. Do not do the gravel. You're gonna make me crumb.
Oh no, I'm gonna chunk.
Gonna make me drum. Okay.
Oh, no.
There's no way for me to do this evening. There's gonna be some banging noises, Michael.
And not the
As
kind
per
you're
usual.
used to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, they're not fun banging. Okay.
So I think I discussed last week. I don't know whether or not John was present, but I mean that's always open to interpretation. That I had said that I was experiencing a degree of research fatigue, where I have despaired of trying to maintain my present standard of 87 pages worth of content to whip at you at any given interval. So I tried something a little different.
Ooh.
I'm doing a semi-Michael today. Insofar
Oh, no.
as
No.
Heavy water too.
no, my water has been heavy for quite some time against my best efforts. But what I have this evening is sort of a hybrid topic. So there's a portion of this which will very much be our standard operating fare, and then there's a portion of this which is going to be kind of what we will wind up doing at Fan Fusion knock wood, should that actually take place.
What is
Okay.
a fan fusion?
Well, it is what happens when you are aboard. I'm going to forget the name of the ship. Damn it! If you have endured the Philadelphia experiment and you are trapped inside of the wall of a submarine after going into another dimension,
Okay.
that's a fan fusion.
Wow.
Indeed. It is also an event that is going to be taking place in Phoenix, Arizona, in May of this year.
Allegedly.
Fingers
Reportedly.
crossed.
Allegedly.
Indeed. So we'll see how that goes. But so what we typically do on this show, for those of you who may or may not be initiated, is we will randomly dive into esoteric topics, and in the course of explaining them to one another, we will leaven in the occasional lie, because that's just more fun.
Allegedly.
Lying is the most fun that a girl can have with her clothes on, is
That's a damn
quote
fact.
I believe Natalie Portman told me.
Thank you,
So,
Damn fact. You can quote me on it.
but so for this week, I have lies. They are present. There are 3 of them.
Are they pretty little
Since
liars?
everyone- No, they're ghastly, and you would know because you saw what my source material is for this evening.
Oof.
Yeah,
We
I got a
did.
question. So what is its penis made out of? Is it also made out of rock?
Well, I mean, if your dork is not made of orange stone, then I don't want it.
I just have, what is it, moss
True.
on a rolling stone? But it's
I just have Stan Lee going, he's got a strange obsession with superhero sex organs.
this is just the thirst trap arc of our show.
Indeed.
No.
This is everything I can do to keep us from having a loose fit here. So, what I will start out with is I have a question for each of you. And it is very important and germane to the discussion of the evening, because Courtney incepted this idea
Oh,
with
no.
me a few weeks ago by saying she's never seen a Batman movie.
Nope.
So, what is the first superhero film that each of you can remember having seen?
Do I have to remember the actual movie or just the movie itself?
What?
Does that
I
question
don't-
make sense?
I don't think he's going to ask you to recount the movie in its entirety.
Yeah, I don't
just-
need a plot synopsis. I just need, like, what's your earliest memory of seeing someone spandex clad and veiny?
If Larry Boy doesn't count from VeggieTales, then I'd have to go with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
Okay.
I know at
Um,
some point in my childhood, I saw one of the Tim Burton Batmans. I don't remember exactly that. And if
Okay.
that
Yeah.
doesn't count,
It does, but so do you remember no other details other than it was Tim Burton and it was a Batman movie? Because they're
think it
pretty
was-
easy to distinguish from one another.
like I said, it was a long time ago. I think it recently came out. So that
We don't judge. It's
narrows
2022.
it down to
People have their own proclivities.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer which one came first, the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man or X-Men?
X-Men.
X-Men?
yes.
Then X-Men. I saw X-Men then.
Okay.
If my answer doesn't count, then my answer is the same as his, but I remember the Phantom.
Ooh. Okay.
That's why I was
It-
asking, because
I'll allow it.
I remember I can see it in my head, but I couldn't tell you a single fucking thing about the movie, but I know that I watched it.
Neither could anybody who saw it, reviewed it, or starred in it.
Yeah, and I was just looking it up. I was trying to making sure that I was going to say it correctly, because all I can think of now is like, Affleck was the bomb in Phantom, yo.
It's pretty spot on, as a matter of fact, strangely enough. And I have a list here
How about you?
that will tell me when that came out, because I'm curious now.
97.
Okay, wow, that is much further along than I expected.
Oof.
So the first superhero film that I saw was the 1960s Batman television show movie.
Oh.
So they did have Batman the motion picture.
Oh, shit. You know
Uh,
what? Mine was actually Keaton Batman. Sorry.
Man, you're fired.
Yeah,
But do you have like fond memories of these experiences, everybody, or is it, you know, kind of like If it was X-Men, I mean, how do you not have fond memories?
That
of
movie
seeing
still holds up. Keaton Batman is fantastic, I think. And Phantom, as I already said, I can't even remember, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay, if I can steal the Kevin Smith line, yeah, for all its flaws and shit, yeah, the 89 Batman's great. Certainly compared to the things that preceded it, it was worlds away. So I'm not going to begrudge Tim Burton anything.
It's no Batman and Robin, but it'll do.
I was going to say that. I have very fond memories
screen.
of that. I love that movie.
I plan on removing every single part of your anatomy that is attached piecemeal if you say that again.
You couldn't even.
He didn't say it was the best. He said it was just good. He enjoyed it.
I was referring to you, Michael.
Oh.
I know what your tastes are, so I'm not entirely shocked, but okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And Courtney, are you just not entirely thrilled by the genre, or was it the sheltered existence that kind of contributed to this?
I think it was more the sheltered existence because I don't think it really watched superhero movies until I was like 17. And I think at that point it was kind of like, But I do remember really enjoying the first 3 X-Men movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then anything Hugh Jackman is in, I'm interested in, so...
As long as it were you, then you'd be even more excited.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Okay, so we've established that you enjoy vascular individuals with a lot of muscles.
On occasion.
All right. So if it's not Superman or Wolverine, she's not interested.
Well, no, it's like I told John. I like them thick, or I like them ripped, or I don't like them at all.
Okay.
What if they're thick and ripped?
Yes.
Okay.
Then she will also be thick and ripped.
I will climb that tree.
So what you're saying is that what you're saying is that fan art of Shane really gave you some trouble.
Daddy,
she was the first one to bring up them thighs, so
yeah. Speaking of things that didn't need to be awakened, we're gonna just run through. So, all right. Based on that, I just want to give a little history lesson here, because things weren't always so great in the realms of comics cinema, in case we've forgotten. And I just want to remind everyone, and if the trailer that I showed all of you before we started rolling on this episode was not sufficient to get us back into a mindset, let's go into the doodly-doo Wayback Machine here. But, Thanks Killing 3? What?
This is so vintage because that trailer is from the year before I was born.
Indeed. And these are going to be interesting times here. So, in any event, in the present pop culture pantheon, cinematic superhero storytelling is notably pervasive, okay? So much so that the auteur directors like Martin Scorsese, if he's going to be trusted to give us any sort of taste-making ideas, man's directed the same film 12 times, but sorry, Marty. I'll still take a job if you got one.
It's okay. I'll allow it.
And I have interesting connectivity to Scorsese in a little bit here, but we'll pause for a moment. Those directors have lamented their puerile and formulaic story structure as the death of artful filmmaking. Okay, we all understand this. Capes, cowls, masks, and muscles saturate movie screens worldwide with heroes, fiends, and furries embroiled in everything from gang warfare to intergalactic turmoil, from time heists to interdimensional incursions. However, it's still worth noting that this 4-color commonality is a relatively new phenomenon in the world of cinematic let me start that over.
Yes.
In the realms of the cinematic oeuvre, if you will. I'm not kidding. I have a bit of the Michaels today. I'm also trying to breathe underwater. So, how did we get here?
Where are we from?
What year is
are
it?
we? Is Nixon
still
president?
If it's Watchmen, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed. He permanently president, as far as I'm concerned. But the comic book film craze of today can't be traced to a single inciting incident, though many, myself included, have tried their hand at doing so. And we can talk about my theory later on if everybody's still inclined. But as presently constructed, the zeitgeist consists of a fleet of varied vessels launched haphazardly over a series of years by multiple film studios. But the topic for discussion today is a film which, either by design or dysfunction, it's open to interpretation, simply failed to launch at all, which is Roger Corman's ill-fated 1994 film, The Fantastic Four. So I know what you're thinking. I've seen 3 fucking Fantastic Four movies, none of which are that one, so what the hell are you babbling about? Allow me to take you to the cinema list. And John, yes, you have a question.
Oh, I was going to say, you're really putting a lot of faith and trust that Michael and Courtney have seen any of the Fantastic Four
I
movies.
have not.
Michael loves bad cinema, so if he hasn't seen the Fantastic Four in some iteration, I will be shocked beyond belief.
I purposefully avoided the most recent iteration.
Same actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will tell you it's better than the other 2.
What?
Yeah.
Interesting.
No foolish.
Okay.
Captain America
but-
fucked the whole thing up.
I was going to say, I'm also, fucking Chris Evans has been all over the place. He was also in a DC film playing a comic book character before all of that as well, which is even more delightful.
Huh.
But I don't have my bloody... In order to try to get everything on here so that my script and all of you silly sons of bitches are here, it has to compress the Zoom. So here we are. There in the chat is something I stumbled across the other day, and absolutely, because I was making one of my own, and I was like, why am I putting this much effort into something that I'm sure someone else has done? So this is canonically every television series or film ever based on a comic book character from its inception forward. And yes, that stretches back into the 30s.
Huh.
And there were many serials of both Batman and Superman that were on television in the 50s. So if that gives you any sort of indication, there's a lot of really ridiculous nonsense featured on this list.
Off-topic question for you, Shane, and I'm sure I know the answer, but do you think that like the original Superman movies are worth a revisit?
By original, what do you mean?
It's like
because if we're talking about this list,
Sorry.
the Superman films from the 50s, because I have not seen those.
Christopher Reeves.
Okay, so the 1970s and 80s Superman films, personally, for me, one, I admit I'm not enamored with the character. It's Christ in a cape. So I'm not really down for
Same.
Superman in general.
Mhm.
But, I mean, they're campy. They're not Batman-level campy initially, but they get there. And as
Let me fly around the world.
as they all
reverse
talk
time.
about, there's some weird, huckstery thing with Lex Luthor always being interested in buying land, and that seems to be like his sole preoccupation. Is just, I gotta own land. It's just really bizarre.
Final off-topic question. Well, I'm sure it's not the final.
I mean, it's on topic technically.
Is the Snyder cut worth watching?
Absolutely. But that's only if you were invested enough to have seen Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman and kind of have the context of the story he was trying to tell.
Okay, so maybe before I hit the Snyder cut, just do a quick little rewatchy of the prior.
I don't think you really even need to. I just,
As long as you've
if
seen
you
it.
understand the tone he
you're
was
familiar.
going for. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
and also for DC purists out there, I was really thrilled to be able to see Darkseid. And as we kind of get to from the dark ages of comic storytelling, as someone who didn't just outright hate Green Lantern the way everybody else did, if I get to see some of these characters in costume, that's worth the price of admission. Because I really am so thrilled with it that it's always like, I just get to see these characters in real life. That's a thing.
Yeah, it wasn't. Was Green Lantern? Was that Perro, the villain in
Perro Aguayo?
Paraquat?
Paramore?
Parallax.
Okay. The weirdest reason that I remember that name is because Between the Buried and Me has a album that's Parallax is in the title, and it is a like high sci-fi concept record. So
Okay.
anyway,
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I really love, particularly like the Jeff Johns run on Green Lantern is fantastic. And like the Green Lantern, Yellow Lantern Wars, really amazing. Anyway,
yep.
the
See,
Sinestro
that's why I
Wars, they
said I
refer
was
to it.
getting off topic because it just
But this is kind of what I'm trying to do here today, because I don't want to just sit and talk at y'all, particularly given the sinus issue. Right. So it's a fun topic for us, and I'm kind of channeling the whole, talk about the things you love, and you're not working as hard.
Yeah.
So, in any event, by a quick consultation of the cinema list that you will have now at your disposal, which is in the show notes for those of you who are looking, if you're interested, because it's a really fascinating list.
It is.
And the context of that list for things that came out in the same years, like, it will blow you away. Some of the things that struck within, a decent blast radius of one another. Like, for instance, the fact that you get Dark Knight in the same year that you get Iron Man just absolutely floored me.
Well, also,
Wild.
as I'm reading this, the most fascinating thing at a glance is that every single year the lists get bigger and bigger. So you're watching
Exactly.
Seriously,
you're watching just the meteoric rise of the genre, like as far as it getting accepted into the zeitgeist, which I think I've always thought is fucking fascinating, and I don't know where I read it, but it was compared back in whatever I read compared superhero movies to our generations to westerns for their generations, where like back in the day, like you had like they were just powerhouses and they're just cranking out westerns after western after western, regardless of if it was good or not. But every now and again you got an Eastwood or a John Wayne feature that was like really fucking hypey,
Absolutely.
And that's how it is today. And I think I'm finally hitting the point with Marvel and stuff where I'm exhausted as far as Marvel movies are concerned. And that's the same thing. Like, you just got to look at the parallels, and it's the same thing that happened to the Western as well. Not saying,
No, it's a saturation point, yeah.
Yeah. There's only so many movies, TV shows, connections. Like, it's like, I gave up after, I'd even finish Endgame. Because I already hit the... Yeah. I think that's well known. I think I've mentioned this probably like once a month. Yeah. Because I was just getting oversaturated. Because I'm like, wait, do I need to watch the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show that was going on? And there was I think some other show that went on around then or something. I can't remember. But now there's like 4 or 5 shows. There's like Loki. There's WandaVision. I haven't seen any of those.
Let me take a couple steps back and say. I think that I guess it doesn't apply to anyone that hasn't finished the arc through Endgame, but WandaVision and Loki are deliriously fun, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But do you need to have watched all the things before?
Well,
or can
do you
someone
need to watch anything, Michael, is the question.
Oh, come on. We're not going that existential.
So
I mean, do you need to have watched all the previous phases in order to watch or understand WandaVision or Loki?
Well, I guess the real question is, how much do you know about quantum superhero storytelling?
Well, I could tell you. Well, actually, that's a good point to if you really want to talk about the idea of
no.
You mentioned the idea. You said quantum, and that means everything's like compact, almost like segmented and separate.
Okay, then I stand by my statement.
Yeah, can you tell an accurate story just by itself without including outside sources? Do people need to do homework before going into a movie? Like,
in many of those instances, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, even with WandaVision and with Loki, I feel like they can exist independently of anything else, and you can just watch them for the fun of it, because they are telling a story with a character that they will give you enough context that I don't feel like, for instance, if you just walked into the Avengers and watched the Avengers, you really don't need to have known any of the stuff that preceded it.
That's fair.
I mean, it helps because it makes the characters a little bit more vivid to you, and you understand what the trappings are and the characters being plotted against one another. But yeah, I think you can just walk into anything, irrespective of anything else, and still enjoy what the story is.
Yeah, I mean, like when Becky and I were first starting to date, I dragged her along, I think, to Civil War. And I don't think she'd been current on many Marvel movies at that point. I think she'd seen like some of the big hitters, but like she still liked the movie, but then she also tolerated me squeezing her hands super aggressively hard when fucking Spider-Man came on the screen.
I thought you were going to go in an entirely different direction of saying, like, when Becky and I first started dating, like, I didn't go introduce her to every woman I've ever slept with beforehand. Like, she was just watching the movie now as it's taking place. Like, she didn't need to see all the backstory to understand the character.
You know what's funny is that I actually kind of did in so many ways. Because we were trying to scare each other off when we met. We were dating.
You've mentioned, yeah.
So I was like, hey, you should look at these train wrecks. Look at these.
I have videos, by the way. We sent them to somebody and never got paid for it. But here you go.
I am still waiting for my royalty check.
So, back on to the subject of horrible comic book cinema. So, once we look back at the list, you discover that the first released Fantastic Four flick managed to reach filmgoers in 2005. All right, and this is as the wave was sort of cresting. It's not quite the high water mark for comic books, but certainly the renaissance had begun. So what we're going to check into is something that preceded that by 10 years. So we can't specifically claim that any one film is responsible for the proliferation of superhero storytelling across the modern cinemascape, but there is certainly a renaissance of appreciation that stems from one comic tentpole film, which emerged in 1989, for those of us who were all here having a bit of conversation. But Tim Burton's Batman did result in a major rejuvenation of comic properties for Warner Brothers, specifically, following their stagnation with the Superman franchise, which kind of died out in 87. And for good reason, because they had gotten really hokey. As Michael alluded to earlier, you've got Superman flying around the planet to reverse time, which we won't even talk about physics here.
It's possible.
I laugh every time I think about it.
But it is something that we saw at the time in particular, is that most film studios saw comic books as something that were marketed to either dim-witted individuals or children. They were not deemed as sophisticated storytelling. There were no real interesting characters. It's just garish colors and people in weird costumes, okay? So you can see that attitude manifest itself in comic book films. And with Batman, that was one of the first times where there was a degree of gravity given to the fact that they're going, yeah, this is a character whose parents were murdered in front of him. So he's not going to be running around being, ludicrous and telling jokes and wearing garish colors. Cut to a couple of years later, and suddenly we were back to that ethos again. But there was a degree to which they allowed the source material to sort of present itself as serious, and that kind of threw the industry on its ear, because they realized, wow, people actually do take this seriously, and it's not just the mouth-breathing populace that we expected. In the same way that professional wrestling manages to do that with a lot of people as well, where they're like, oh, really? The Cretans just love this, right? But God, there's a lot of Cretans. So, because of Batman's success, superhero intellectual properties started to look a lot more attractive to the big studios, which resulted in Marvel specifically making dedicated efforts to land substantial payouts and options for their most famed franchises. And you'll see this manifest in the early thousands. But as we learned from John's previous episode, which I was going to be prepared and have the number for that, and I think it's 48.
Talk about Black Panther?
Yes. I think it was it's in the 40s somewhere. Yes. But in any event, detailing the Wesley Snipes-driven Black Panther adaptation. In the early 90s, there were a wealth of Marvel properties in play for cinematic development. So, brace yourselves, kids, because I think John alluded to a couple of these, but as I went back into it, I'm floored at some of the names in play. So, alongside Black Panther, James Cameron was reportedly developing an Amazing Spider-Man film for Carol Co.
Is that bullshit?
No, not bullshit.
Interesting.
This, I'm telling you, this stuff floored me when I started looking into it, because it's just, sounds weird.
Yeah, James Cameron sounded familiar or rang a bell, but a Spider-Man with Cameron.
Which would have been really interesting, particularly once you start seeing Avatar and other films like that are action-oriented.
I was going to say, forbid that it did well if it ever happened, because then we'd have to wait fucking 35 years for a sequel, so...
Now, even more shocking, and I know that this is something that is just going to fly by most of you because it's a little bizarre, but Wes Craven who everyone knows, of course, as being the godfather of the horror genre as far as they are concerned. He planned to follow up his box office success with 1982's Swamp Thing by optioning Marvel's Paramount occult property, Doctor Strange, into a motion picture, which was going to star a pre-James Bond Pierce Brosnan.
Ooh,
Whoa.
that sounds... Is that bullshit?
Yeah, I was
Because
gonna
that
say,
sounds
that
like
sounds
too good to be
right.
true.
Which are you saying for bullshit?
Which means you're on the right track.
I guess
he always
that's a
does
fair
this.
point.
He always does this when you're close.
But there's a lot of
mean-
information that got imparted
that's
preceding
fair.
that.
Okay.
So.
Did Wes
shit.
Craven
I wanted to call the whole thing, but I guess Wes Craven and Doctor Strange.
Wes Craven was supposed to be developing a Doctor Strange film.
Huh. Then I guess is Pierce Brosnan bullshit?
Pierce Brosnan is bullshit.
Who was supposed to be then?
They did not allude to any of that in the
Aw.
research. It was just that it was in development. I don't think they were really casting at this point. And with names that get thrown around, remember, this is the 90s. So late 80s, early 90s. So people who are hot today, not necessarily going to be names that will spring to mind as we run through here. But in fact, the comics were such a hot topic that talks were even initiated by Arnold Schwarzenegger and director Paul Verhoeven following their success with 1990's Total Recall to develop a cerebral, science fiction-oriented Incredible Hulk film, which was going to be penned by the writing team of Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett, which John will know were the individuals who created and adapted, well, one, they adapted We Can Remember It For You Wholesale by Philip K. Dick into Total Recall.
Okay.
But they also were the collaborators on Alien for Ridley Scott, as well as the adapters for Blade Runner for Ridley Scott, and then later Dune, which Ridley Scott was optioning, but he elected not to shoot because they were going to make him shoot in Mexico City, and he described it as a dump, and he didn't wish to spend time there.
Didn't he also say, and I
Ugh.
quote, Dune is for virgins?
Agree.
I don't think I actually heard that, but
'Cause, I
the
made it
parallels
up.
are really weird. Like he was actually planning on making it a two-part film back in the day as well. So the Denis
interesting.
Villeneuve parallels are really interesting. And actually, they had Frank Herbert adapt the book for the screenplay initially, and then they scrapped Herbert's own write-up of his own work and then had somebody else work on the script, and then that's what floats into Shusett and O'Bannon.
The amount of time that I've spent reading Frank Herbert now, I can understand why they would pass on him adapting his own work, because they probably were
Yeah.
scratching their heads going, what the fuck did he just say?
There's a lot of verbiage in Herbert that is not common to the normal lexicon, understandably.
Motherfucker just spent 6 paragraphs describing an apple.
Yeah, he's a little verbose, understandably. So, in any event, it is necessary to clarify at this point that the height of Marvel's screen-based success surrounded the Lou Ferrigno Incredible Hulk television show, which aired
Yeah.
between 1977 and 1982. Now, we find out later that Arnold Schwarzenegger was actually up for the role. And he lost to Lou Ferrigno because he was vertically challenged. So Schwarzenegger was not seen as being viable. So now Schwarzenegger's got a little cachet in the Hollywood run and goes, fuck this guy. I'm going to get my name into the game. And that's why they start developing this, because almost to prove that he's as good as his fellow Mr. Olympiad, Arnold's like, I need to be the Hulk. We need to make this work.
I don't know why. When you said that he was vertically challenged, I immediately remembered the movie that he did with
Big?
I think it was one where he and I'm forgetting his name. Were
Danny
twins.
DeVito.
Danny
Twins.
DeVito.
It's just
yes.
called
yeah,
Twins.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh-huh.
When you said vertically challenged, I immediately like, well, what the fuck is Danny DeVito then?
Danny
in the
DeVito
ground?
is almost subhuman. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, he's
I'm
like
like,
5'8" or
jeez.
5'9".
Oh, no, he's like 2
No,
feet
look
tall.
it up. I looked it up like a week ago.
No, he's like 2 feet tall. He's a walking rat, basically. If Patton Oswalt has taught me nothing, it's Danny DeVito in a rat suit.
You know what? Yeah, I think I gotta know.
In any event, comparatively, Lou Ferrigno is significantly taller than
Courtney-
Schwarzenegger is.
Courtney, Danny DeVito is
Where'd you
4'10".
Yeah, that was a lie,
Yeah.
John. It was a lie.
I was like, what the hell are you talking about? He said on a good day he's 5 feet.
She's
but-
stealing my shtick, man. What the fuck?
Was that one of those lies, Shane? Did you like outsource
we
your lies?
incepted it, yeah.
Oh
yes,
shit.
yes,
That was
I'm
the
taking the
hidden
John
fourth lie.
approach.
I was gonna say no, Michael. You and I are the only ones that are cheap enough to have done that.
That's fair.
Cheap,
would've-
cheap for
yeah.
me to have come up with it, and cheap of you to agree to go along with it.
So, beyond the Schwarzenegger of it all, very few Marvel properties had managed to capture the public consciousness on any grand scale. So while attempting to capitalize on the fanfare of the Donner Superman films in the late 80s, they had produced flicks featuring The Punisher, which starred Dolph Lundgren in 1989, which if you are not familiar with this thing, you need to go check it out. It's ridiculous. Really horribly done.
It's just it's horrific.
It's a crime. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. It's insensitive and it refers back to Germany again. So,
Oh, no.
You don't want
needless to
Michael
say,
to censor you?
I mean, he can do whatever he wants.
I'd prefer he didn't.
And then this was followed up immediately by Captain America in 1990, which, this is interesting fodder for all of you sitting at home, starred J.D. Salinger's son, Matt, as the Star-Spangled Superhero.
I highly recommend for you guys and for those listening that you follow along on that link in the show notes, because I'm clicking in and seeing a picture of this motherfucker, and it's
Well, you know what's funny?
special.
So then you mentioned that, and I wanted to get on this topic because I found in the midst of cleaning out some of the stuff from my childhood that my folks saved for me, this is a magazine that I purchased in that exact year when Matt Salinger was starring as Captain America.
The
And there's a
costume's
lot
right.
of...
Is the
yeah.
new movie?
Oh, the movie's fucking awful. But... and I will detail that as we speak. But so this is stuff that is very near and dear to my heart, obviously. So as an indicator of its particular failings here, because neither of those films were financially lucrative. I hate to break the bank for everybody, but yeah, they didn't do very well. As an indicator of this particular failings, Captain America was intended for release in August of 1990. It was going to coincide with the 50th anniversary of Captain America as a character. Okay? Several release dates were announced between fall of 1990 and the winter of 1991. The film went unreleased for 2 years before making its direct-to-video debut on cable TV in the United States in the summer of 1992.
Is that really how it went
So-
down?
Yep.
Wow.
They had that thing sitting around for quite some time. To further mar this, in the UK, it was released on VHS in 1991 prior to the US release. So Captain America made it overseas before it was released in the motherland, which is just devastating. Furthermore, the film was also given a limited international release. In the Philippines, they changed the title to Blood Match, as opposed to Captain America.
Okay.
And it was released on December 11th, 1991, in a double feature with a fucking Snoopy cartoon.
What?
What?
Yes.
No.
Captain America. I'm sorry. Blood Match. And
Blood
Snoopy.
Match.
Okay.
And
okay.
Snoopy. Yes. And furthermore, to add insult to injury, on the posters, they miscredit Jean-Claude Van Damme as the martial arts instructor.
Who do you think
Now,
would win
remember-
a fight, Snoopy or Captain America?
Well, furthermore, Jean-Claude Van Damme was the star of a film called Blood Sport, which came out a few years earlier. So this thing was just all over the board.
And Snoopy died.
Exactly. Well, you can't make a film for peanuts. But
Not in this economy.
Jesus.
there are many Marvel comic aficionados who, because of this, referred to this era as the Dark Ages, indicating that the act of simply seeing characters in costume was considered a victory because they grossly misrepresented most superhero characters in film and television. As an example, Thor made an appearance on the Incredible Hulk television show, as well as Daredevil, from what we're told. But Thor's was very egregious because he was depicted as an obnoxious, blowhard surfer stereotype rather than an Asgardian prince, or, as it was in the comic books, as a scientist who discovered the hammer and then becomes Thor.
Is that
needless
actually
to
his
say-
origin story?
Yes, the origin story in the comics is that it is a scientist who becomes Thor, that Thor was not actually, the son of Odin. That you could... Yeah, it's
I like
dramatically
the mythical
different.
approach a lot more than that.
Yeah. It's but to the argument, Marvel at the time tried to be very realistic. So as opposed to the far-fetched, like Superman is an alien, they explained that Thor doesn't fly just because he's powered by the sun. He actually uses centripetal force because he whips the hammer
throws it.
around with
Yeah,
such violence that it propels him forward. And it's not just, random happenstance that allows these things. So there's an argument behind a lot of these things. Hence, Bruce Banner was, infused with gamma radiation until he turned into an incredible creature. Like Ben Grimm, the Thing just caught a very aggressive STD and hence... full body scab.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of full body scabs, how are we getting to this fucking this blob?
Oh, I'll get there. Just
It's clobbering time.
so in any event, it's about to be clobbering time.
Yes.
It was into this barren wasteland of Marvel properties that Roger Corman's Fantastic Four was born. So the film, almost an urban legend in the pre-internet days, was made for an astonishingly low $2 million. Shot on the cheap, of course, in a grueling 21-day span.
Whoa.
Not bullshit.
Wow.
Damn, that is short.
That explains
Yes,
why it was so bad.
Like Danny
Indeed.
DeVito. Yeah.
Thank you.
He would have made the movie a lot better.
Now, there are documentaries, and you can actually watch the entirety of this film on YouTube if you are interested. The link is in the show notes, so you can check this thing out.
Michael,
But-
you know how you're talking about sometimes you like to take an edible? You should.
That does sound like a good night well spent.
I over the weekend, I embarrassed myself by sharing a joint with somebody, and I've never really been high in front of a friend before, and I felt like I was. Well, I mean, I've been high in front of Courtney, but it's different
I
because
guess
she's
we're not
heard me
friends
say.
anymore.
Let's put it this way: Courtney knows me rather well. This is someone that I didn't know well.
I mean, you
it's like-
sleep with her husband.
You sleep-
so.
yeah,
So it was a
exactly.
it's never mind. I don't have a good dismount for this. I'm just saying that
Okay.
I would partake in this adventure with you, Michael, if you wanted to get stoned together for the first time in the same room and watch something
man.
horrible and see how we react.
Yes.
And since we love talking about bad cinema on this podcast, it's well
Film it?
worth investigating.
oh yeah.
I'm not going to give you the blow by blow the way that we typically do because it's one, the film's not worth it, and two, like it's just it's an investment of time that I'm not willing to make at this point in my life. But this film never saw any official release, that is theatrical, video, or otherwise. Okay.
Wow.
It's only been circulated heavily on the comic book convention bootleg circuit, basically, is the only way that you can find this. And Michael's eyes just lit up
Yeah,
like New York
connections.
Times Square.
Conventions.
No,
Indeed.
connections back to
Connections
the
to
furry
conventions,
fandom and
yes.
all that. Yeah. Beautiful.
Every time you say it, I still think of it as just some weird ghost with fur.
The furry fandom. Woo.
The furry phantom.
Ah.
It's there inside your mind. So, if you look hard enough, of course, as I alluded to, you can also find a decent-looking version of this on the internet, but I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. For context, at this point, film rights to Marvel comic characters were in an even more fractured state than they are presently, if you can imagine. So if it's chaotic trying to sort through Marvel, Fox, Sony, and Universal Pictures all owning parts of the Marvel characters, things were so chaotic back in the 80s because you had independent studios that were actually able to afford purchasing properties from Marvel because they weren't really popular. Enter the dragon, as it were. The incident that precipitates the creation of this ill-fated film revolves around a typical Hollywood legal conceit, which is the lapsing of an the lapsing of an intellectual property option. Now, for those of us who enjoy horror films, particularly the Hellraiser franchise, we have been buffeted about the neck and shoulders with nonsense like this before, which is folks are desperate to hold on to the property, so let's just, throw a script at this thing that's already written for an entirely different project and just whip a character into it, and it's a Hellraiser film. Because we don't want to let that lapse. We want to keep owning Pinhead. And the same thing essentially was in play here. I'm not going to explain copyright restriction to anybody or what it entails because I'm not Michael, but I do have a paragraph here in case anybody needs
Michael's
clarification.
Really swirly, yeah.
Yes. But everything is germane to the conversation because in 1983, a German producer named Bernd Eichinger
Stop yelling.
He was in a bunker with Hitler when Michael washed up on the
beach. He's bypassing our defenses. He's getting into the bunker.
Hey, Michael, can I make a small request of you?
Oh, no.
On your wedding day. When you carry her over or through the lintel, just
I actually thought the stepdaughter was going to say that, but
I'm chunking here.
I'm chunking here. So, Mr. Eichinger met with Stan Lee at Lee's home to explore the possibility of obtaining an option for a movie based on the Fantastic Four. Like you do. Of course, at this point, the option wasn't available until 3 years later, but when it did make itself available, Eichinger's production company, Constantine Films, obtained it for the price that the producer has called not enormous. Sorry. Which we do find out later on is around $250,000. Now, granted, again, this is the mid-'80s, so still a sizable chunk of change, but where films are concerned, not very much.
Well, and then they used the leftover $5,000 they had to make the movie.
Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So, despite some interest, we're told, from Warner Brothers and Columbia Pictures at the time, the budget concerns precluded any production, and with a contracted option scheduled to expire December 31st, 1992, and that's an important date to note here, Constantine asked Marvel for an extension. That extension was not forthcoming. So, Eichinger, to try to get around this and retain his option, elected to produce a low-budget Fantastic Four film, going to the one man he knew could make an ambitious sci-fi movie in a hurry on a minuscule budget, and that is B-movie specialist Roger Corman. Now, I'm not going to sit and lecture everybody about Roger Corman here because it's really not essential if you don't know who the guy is. He's kind of referred to as the Pope of pop cinema. He started a lot of filmmakers, including like Francis Ford Coppola, Ron Howard, Martin Scorsese, Jonathan Demme, James Cameron. There's a slew of filmmakers that have worked with Corman.
Okay.
He is also semi-responsible for Troma Pictures, so like The Toxic Avenger and Nukem High, like a lot of really campy B films, a lot of Corman productions. Dark Star, actually, I believe, is a Roger Corman production as well, which is what led Dan O'Bannon to write Alien. In any event, there's also a significant slew of actors, including like Dennis Hopper, Jack Nicholson, Sylvester Stallone, who have been discovered and spent a lot of time working with Corman. So the guy's got bona fides. All right, this is why they would go to him. Plus, they expected him to make a marketable picture in a very limited amount of time. So you go to the best, right?
Well, I mean,
however,
the trailer's cringe, but
well, here's the point. The difficulty about Corman is also that they're very well aware that you're getting substandard material here because he did not have a giant studio. He had a warehouse in Van Nuys.
So he was the RC Cola of this whole thing?
He was the Dr. Thunder of the film industry, yes. Is just, and to that point, most of Corman's films that his production company is famed for were basically derivatives of somebody else's concepts. Like, the thing he was most famed for was doing a bunch of Edgar Allan Poe stories and converting them to film. So he wasn't great with handling his own ideas, as we'll see manifested in this film. But to further complicate matters, Corman didn't actually direct the fucking thing. That unenviable task fell to Oli Sassoon, or Sasson, he's Italian.
Oh, it's a household name. Everyone knows.
Indeed, yes, Ole Sasson, who helped to see the project through the whirlwind 4-week shoot on a budget that has been reported between $1 million, $2 million, okay? Not a lot of money. For contrast, even the modestly funded Dolph Lundgren Punisher flick, which didn't need special effects, didn't anything, just needed, as Keanu Reeves would later say, guns. Lots of guns. That had an $11 million budget in 89. So ridiculous that they expected that, because of that film did not involve a character constituted purely of orange rock, a flaming flying teenager, or a taffy man that needed to be manifested on screen here, okay?
I mean, I would kind of argue that the better Fantastic Four movie would be the episodes of Venture Brothers, where it's not even Fantastic Four. What are they called? The Impossible? No, that's an actual.
It's been long enough that I'm going to forget what it, but yes, terrifying. And yes, that is one of the reasons why Venture Brothers lampooning that is fantastic, but we'll get into this later on. Fantastic Four are not really a phenomenal property, but
it is The Impossibles, by the way.
Okay. You should check those things out if you're not familiar, friends. They're fantastic. Pun intended.
Courtney and Jonah in particular, you should watch Venture Brothers. I think you guys would really, really like it. Well, wait. No, I've made you watch it.
You made us watch it.
Yeah, that's right. Never mind. I blacked that out.
It's also like
you
have
high,
to kind of...
Oh, shut up.
Except for he's not high in front of his friends, so...
Only his lover.
He's only high in front of his audience. So
that is fair. He never said he was never high in front of his lover, and you were just there or something.
It is
tangentially.
It has come with the territory, and I've learned to accept the fact that if I'm going to make love to Jonah, that Courtney's going to be in the room as well. So
you're the unfortunate third wheel.
I mean, someone has to hold the camera for his OnlyFans.
Oh.
I was like, this is also why she's thinking about my thighs so much. But anyway,
tasty content.
Daddy.
Sorry, Daddy. You were saying, Daddy. Sorry.
The long and the short of this, pun wholly intended, is that production began on this glorious little show on December 28th, 1992, which is 3 days to spare before Marvel would regain the rights to the franchise.
Fuck you, you're not taking it from me.
Is that bullshit?
No, it is not.
I had to try. God.
Like, this is what is so duplicitous about this entire project, is that they went into this thing basically, and according to all parties, particularly those on the Marvel side, they're like, yeah, this was a joke. They did it because they didn't want us to get our property back. However, this was never disclosed to the director, cast, or crew of this production, so that no one ever mentioned, hey, this is just a little bit of sly finagling on our part to try to keep Constantine Films' hold on the Fantastic Four, so you don't really need to invest yourselves, okay? They just wanted to have a really potentially lucrative franchise they could use later on, and keep it at a relatively low cost. So $1 to $2 million, that's kind of just, we'll call that a loss, right? So they go into production thinking that this is just a really great fast-tracked film, and all these folks are like, we're going to be superstars. We're going to be in like a comic movie. It's going to be great, right? This thing was not very well received, even by the folks at Marvel who saw it, which is one of the reasons why later on they panned this thing. So again, I'm not going to give you the blow-by-blow of the actual film itself, but just to give you an idea here, casting for the film was a bit of an anomaly. as the biggest box office draw of the collective came in the form of Jay Underwood, which a few of you may know as the bad boyfriend Bug in Uncle Buck. He was starring as Johnny Storm. He's also in a couple of Disney films, which I think is probably what most folks would know him from. It's like The Boy in the Elevator Shoes or something. I'm not going to look it up. I don't care.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's your attraction. So I think the woman who plays Sue Storm, the only other film I had ever seen her in is she is like a tertiary character in Love Potion #9. Which, for those who are not Sandy Bullock fans in the room, like it's you're pulling from the bottom of the barrel here. Not a great flick. Needless to say, the production company was kind of hedging their bets that the property itself was going to be the selling point, if anything, and we don't need to cast names in this thing. That said, they apparently had, anywhere between like 500 to 1,000 different actors pour in with headshots trying to audition for this thing. And there are a slew of notable individuals who auditioned for this and didn't get the roles. For instance, so the stuntman you have to characterize as, I threw myself off a little bit because Ben Grimm and the Thing are the same character, but they need to depict both of them. So they have an actor who actually wound up, the person playing Ben Grimm was taller and bigger than the stuntman they cast to play the Thing. So he actually shrinks to become the Thing, which is delightful. But furthermore, getting back to the Scorsese connection I was alluding to earlier, the gentleman who was cast as the Thing is a stuntman whose most sort of like bit of notoriety we can link to is he is the man who has his eyeball popped out by Joe Pesci in Casino. He's the guy whose head is in a vice that they're torturing through the scene in Casino. Yeah. Oh, yes, for a film that's 25 years old. I need to give spoilers.
I know. I've said that on air before, too, but I still haven't seen Casino.
Just grow the fuck up.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Put your head in a vice. So, needless to say, like, they're swinging for the fences. But furthermore, the other major names noted for auditioning were Mark Ruffalo.
Bullshit.
Mark Ruffalo auditioned for this.
Didn't he play the original Hulk in this recent run? No, was it Ruffalo who did?
Ruffalo's the current Hulk, my friend.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Who's the one who didn't make it? Fuck.
You haven't seen Fight Club in a minute.
Yeah.
Jesus! It was Norton. God fucking damn it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Thank you, Jesus.
You're welcome. In any event, Titus Welliver, who, if you're a Sons of Anarchy fan, plays a crazed Irishman. And even more hilarious for Family Guy friends and fans, Patrick Warburton auditioned for Ben Grimm.
That would have been incredible.
I would have liked that.
Granted,
it's clobbering time.
Having the Tick and the Thing as the same character might be a little bit too much, but yeah, this... Yeah, all of the punchlines you got through. It's clobbering time. Okay, anybody? So, make no mistake, friends. This isn't a good movie. All right. The one thing that you can give it praise for is it is remarkable not only for its fidelity to the source material, because its costumes are as close to being direct lifts from the page as you can get, but it also has a degree of absolute sincerity with which it approaches such an impossible task, considering the budget that it was given. So, when you try to make a film in 21 days for under $2 million, you're not going to get quality. Needless to say, like, their set decorations consisted largely of like spray painted Dixie cups that were duct taped to walls to make things look science-y or futuristic. So apparently their costumes, they tried to explain that they're so ghastly, but they're going like, well, I mean, Sue had to hand sew them, right? She actually created these, so they're going to look a little janky, right? The one thing they did shell out a significant sum of time and money on is the Thing suit, which is like the one redeeming quality, particularly when you see the trailer. They actually made a jaw that articulates and moves for the fact that it's a helmet, which again, we're talking like early 90s. But then for all the money they spent there, they suffer significantly. One, because all of the Reed Richards stretching, the effects are ghastly. Like, they actually have a scene at the end of the movie after he and Sue get married, spoilers, where his hand stretches up out of the limousine sunroof to wave to everybody, and it really looks like someone just took like a pipe cleaner and made a squiggly S and just waved it back and forth. Like, it's horrifically done. And whenever, so Johnny actually does not ever flame on until like the last 10 minutes of the film. And then it was animated poorly. So if it looks like a rejected section from Fantasia. That's how, like, they have him fly into the middle of a screen, he gets hit by a laser, and they have him just circle in midair, like the Apple loading logo. Like, he's just a static thing that just flips around in a circle. Not very well done. But despite all of these pitfalls and all of the things that they had to cope with, a minor miracle was performed, and this film was actually completed in that 21-day schedule and was set to open on Labor Day weekend in 1993. Okay? Furthermore, it was very well received at the San Diego Comic-Con, where they showed the trailer. Apparently, they had people just teeming in and out of the building who were desperate to get in and see this thing. It was then set to have its first public screening. Its debut to the world was going to take place at the Mall of America, which is a little passé now, but again, at that time, it's the biggest mall in the United States. It's pretty substantive. So, however, that never actually happened. And then later on, once that bypassed, they were set for a January 1994 opening, which also never materialized. So later on, you could actually see there was a VHS copy of another film that got released. It's another Corman production called Carnosaur. And you can take a stab as to what film you think that was lampooning.
Is that a prequel to a Velocipaster?
Fuck, you beat me to it.
Pretty much. Like, hey, this Jurassic Park thing's really big right now. We should probably get in on that action. So on that VHS tape was the trailer for the Fantastic Four. So people actually bought Carnosaur just to see the Fantastic Four trailer. After that, however, everything was nuked. You could not find it anywhere. So much so that actually Marvel went in and got the prints of the film and took them. So,
wow.
Here is where everything starts to unravel. So, as recently as 2005, Roger Corman actually denies ever actually owning a print of this film.
What?
Like, he said that essentially once they completed, they were sending it out, they were working on stuff, and in the when they were in the post-filming, Marvel Studios founder Avi Arad, I think I got that correct, he went and purchased the film from our good friend Eichlinger for a couple $1 million cash. Man. And this is his exact phrase, I purchased it for a couple million in cash and burnt it.
I say, I'm a hero. Applaud me.
There's an interview that they have of Stan Lane at like a panel for a comic book convention in the 90s where he's basically saying like, yeah, they're completing this movie, but we didn't have any say in it, and it was the last thing our lawyers sold to an outside party that was against it, and everything we do for Marvel going forward is going to be our property. We're going to treat it and deal with it ourselves. This thing is just, it's not intended to be consumed by human beings, and we're just going to disavow all knowledge. And you're like, okay, Stan.
That's fucking hardcore. Yeah.
So the rumor mill essentially surrounding how all of this got done is that Avi Arad was working on the X-Men animated series for Fox, which aired on television. It was very popular at the time. And subsequently, Fox started kind of kindling the concept of purchasing more Marvel properties. Once Avi started working on this deal, the Fantastic Four, being one of their sort of linchpin properties, was thrown into that mix. And so Fox was going to start souring on the deal. There's a rumor that Chris Columbus was supposed to direct a Fantastic Four film, and that was kind of what was involved in the pitch. And so,
And outside of other, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say outside of other movies like Home Alone, right? And then also Harry Potter 1 and 2. That's Columbus.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was going to be kind of a gift to Chris, since he was a fan of the comic and things like this. And this is why Avi saw the chance to sort of legitimize Marvel by tying it to an actual studio and getting away from these, harebrained idiots that they're just operating out of this, backdoor system over here. And so he went in, offered Corman and Eichlinger a significant amount of money to just say, listen, give this thing up. We'll buy the property back from you, and you don't need to do this anymore. And of course, those guys are like, oh, well, we were in this to make money in the first place. That's really all we were angling for. So sure, we'll take it.
Perfect. Everybody wins.
Except for all the people who made the movie, were spending, countless hours toiling away to edit this piece of shit. None of them were told. So they kept letting this thing go on like it was going to come out. So all the actors are going around doing press. They're going to comic book conventions. They're shaking hands, signing autographs, and kissing babies.
No.
So much so that they never told any of them. So there's the whole documentary Doomed, which details the making of this film, is basically all the actors and the directors just griping about the fact that they hate Marvel for having done this to them.
Damn.
Yes, Stan Lee's exact quote about the film was, it was never supposed to be seen by living human beings. So, this incensed a lot of people, not the least of which being the director, Ole Sassoon, who essentially, to John's point earlier, is like, I need to have this film because I put a significant amount of work into this thing, and this is how I'm going to get subsequent work going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't have a movie to show, I didn't make a movie. I just wasted a bunch of time and effort. And his exact quote here is, I wish these people would at least have had the fucking decency to say, let's at least give the guy a decent print of the work, right?
Yeah.
And then all the people who made this film could actually show it to their friends and family. And that's not difficult logic to argue with. Like,
Not at all.
I completely sympathize. But he got his wish eventually because it managed to make it out. Apparently, he claims that when he was going to go steal the print from Corman's studio, only to discover that it had already been taken. But he did have a couple of working edits that he took to be duped, but those were also taken later on. His belief is when he took it into the duping studio that the two kids that were working the reels are like, oh, these are people in costumes. This is a Fantastic Four. So they made a copy for themselves while they were duping the print of the film. And that's what eventually got distributed and made it out into all the comic book conventions later on.
And doesn't that make you sad that it doesn't really exist anymore? Like the prints and things like that.
Oh,
They exist in different ways, but I mean, like,
yeah,
that was a whole fucking era,
I really am oddly nostalgic for things like this because I just watched Sound City again. And as someone who the first few records I made in an actual studio were cut on tape, and I was part of that process and I saw it, like, it's hard. I know there's the talk about the loss of fidelity that you get when you start compressing into CD, but there's something that is very almost reverent and almost like a religious experience when you actually have to cut tape and work on editing takes that way, as opposed to just the drag and drop functionality you have these days.
So
funny? Yeah, I'm with you.
I was talking to like Gail, right?
Yeah,
Rich, and you've met Gail a couple
not
times.
Intimately, but
yeah. Well, I've been chatting with Gail and reconnecting with him, and I was talking about some of the like mixing things. So inside of the software that I use for recording and mixing, it's so fucking ironic to me that when I went to school, we did spend time learning how to do things on tape, and I was around analog tape machines a lot, and it's all well and fine, but like after like the little section of learning where they show you how to splice and put things back together, like you never really touched it ever again, because then they just showed you how to integrate your digital machines in. However, like nowadays there are plugins in it. I'm not joking. It's on every single thing that I use or that I do is virtual tape. Like it's a plugin that is algorithm, like the algorithm makes the things that you thought that you
The
wouldn't be able to,
textures and tones, right? Yeah.
you saturate it with tape, like digital tape. So even though
Okay.
we've all moved away from tape machines, I can almost guarantee anything that you listen to probably has a tape sim plug-in on it to give it
Yeah.
that warmth that you get from tape.
It's the same thing that like we lament. One of the reasons why those audiophiles amongst us like to go get vinyl again is like the fidelity exists, because like if you listen to something like the Civil War's first album, where they really have dynamic that plays, like they get substantively louder. It's something that annoys a lot of other people who just want it. I want to set it at a volume and have it stay there. And anybody who's watched late night television who have a show that's at like 2, and then all of a sudden the commercial's at 11. Like those things can be annoying, but for people who are expressive musically speaking, like performance wise, like you want those swells, you want the ebbs and flows in a performance, and you really lose that with all the compression we do these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, you miss those things.
That's a fair point, and they're compressed for different reasons, because you're right, in music you should be able to hear when it's supposed to be loud, when it's supposed to be quiet. But like if you're just listening to I almost said an audio medium. If you're listening to something like podcasts,
right,
which are part of the audio medium, but like that will even occur in some of the podcasts that I listen to, where their talking will be at a low volume, and which is fine. Then I'll just adjust my volume, and then I'll go to a commercial, and all of a sudden I feel like my car's radio is about to explode,
and you're bleeding from your ear canals.
Yeah, exactly, and the people on the other side of the freeway can hear it. So
You know what's funny mentioning podcasts in that, Michael, is that the one episode of this show that I edited on the master out, which is, what gets published, there's a virtual tape simulation. So, boom.
Well, look at that.
Would you look at that?
I don't even know if I have that installed. That's probably just an add-on. I haven't bothered. I am not a good editor, nor do I care.
Indeed.
Sorry.
And the product shows. Well, also speaking of being a poor editor, I'm also being a poor presenter here, because we're just we're living in the moment. But I'm enjoying these.
I was gonna say, you kind of fucked it up for me a little bit when you implied that it was almost a loose fit. So I took it upon myself to go ahead and be a little more chatty.
Yeah, and that's really what we want.
He was inviting us to do that. Yeah, it was a loose fit with a topic, which I feel is very good.
Hey, to Courtney's
because
point,
otherwise,
Dr. Sleep was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we had a topic over, like at least a good centralized topic, and that gave us direction instead of just not ranting per se, but just like going off on bizarre tangents and not going anywhere.
Well, and then like to get back to what you were saying though, because I had a thought that I secreted away, but one of the things you lose with a lot of compression, John and I have lamented this with Margot recordings. There are instruments that live in the background of a lot of those recordings that when you compress, they just get mixed in with everything else and you don't really hear them. But when you're sitting in front of, an actual speaker attached to something that's playing a vinyl, you start to hear these instruments pop out. And it's things that you really like, you often have to really fight to try to get in your headphones otherwise, because you're trying to force so much sound into one thing. It's like a bloody a flower opening when you listen to these things.
And not to get drastically too off topic, so that
that's what we're doing. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Something you should also pay attention to. You can pay attention to, and it might make your life, like, give you a nice little Snapple fact, is mastering. So like when you see these records come out that have like the remaster stamp on it, my first impression back in the day was to roll my eyes, because it just seems like a cash grab. But the reason that I think about this is because of Shane talking about Margot. So Margot had a record that they put out that they didn't necessarily at the time have the money to actually do a proper master for. And recently Richard Edwards finally had the money to get it professionally mastered, and he re-released it and pulled the old one off. So as a collector, and Shane I think has it too.
I do.
The album that I'm talking about is Buzzard.
Mm-hmm.
I have now what I know is the unmastered version and the mastered version, and you can put them side by side, And exactly what Shane was just talking about is 100% true. And that was like my 1-to-1 example. Like it's fucking incredible to think.
Yeah, it's you're just you really miss some of those things where you're like, wow, I had no idea. There's just this weird jangly guitar that's hanging over in like the back right.
It's the weird shit that you like as like just a listener you're never gonna pick up until it's there or it's not there. You know?
Yeah. And it's those intangibles that a film like, Roger Corman's The Fantastic Four was sorely missing. Yeah. And quality control purposes being what they are, I find it really funny, and here's where I'm going to, lament this a little bit, but it's strange that a property like The Fantastic Four, which has generated such little interest in the view of the general public, that like the comic book which bears its name would have been canceled years ago if it weren't for the fact that it was one of like the founding fathers of the Marvel movement, right? You don't hear a lot of people talking about the Submariner anymore either, so we are willing to part with some of our history, but folks are oddly nostalgic about the Fantastic Four. But it keeps inspiring this weird sort of like protective instinct amongst fans, right? So like look at the Josh Trank reboot as the two of you have not watched it. I speak to the boys in the room here who care about these things.
Yeah, also
because
Courtney, sorry
of
for,
the
like...
internet feedback.
I feel like
Courtney's got better things to do.
We definitely just like are in the lunchroom right now. Anyway,
but I mean, like, look at the Trank thing, and there was so much talk about how he was griping about not getting his, appropriate image up on screen, like the vision he had was not represented, and all the other talk, and yeah, the thing CGI was ghastly, and everybody's just kind of like railing, and it's not a bad film. The characters are just not that interesting, unfortunately.
Like this podcast.
They're scientists. Yeah. Well, you can fuck off whenever you want.
She's talking about me. I'm not very interesting.
So, in any event, considering that this same source material has essentially been like hovering around cancellation numbers for nearly 2 decades at this point, and you still have people who are clamoring for some cinematic representation which appropriately addresses these characters, I just find ludicrous. Like, if we learned nothing from 2005 and 2007 Fantastic Four films, it's that you're not really batting with great stuff here. And you can't blame it on the actors, because a lot of those folks went on to depict other characters in other Marvel franchises and are doing swimmingly well. So
I feel like that's another episode that you could knock out of the park, is just like a list of good actors that were cast into really bad movies.
Prime example of that, we'll talk about the Black Dahlia film, and we can just go on for hours about that.
Is Hartnett in that one?
Yes, and Scarlett Johansson, Hilary Swank,
Fuck do I
Aaron
know
Eckhart.
that? I've never even watched that movie. I don't know why I know that Hartnett was.
You probably saw the trailer, because he was kind of Hollywood's it boy at that time. Like, he was in everything around that era. I don't know why, but it's just, from fucking Pearl Harbor to...
Oh, yeah, fuck.
Any one of those other random, like, the guy's in fucking Sin City, for God's sakes. Like, he was in everything. Including my heart.
Yeah, for a while.
No. I mean, we all love 40 Days and 40 Nights, right? We're not losing anything by revealing that to the public.
I think it's a wholesome movie.
Indeed. All the holes. My holes!
My holes.
So, in any event, that kind of encapsulates our discussion about this weird cinematic debacle that was the unreleased Fantastic Four film, and it's not really befitting what I would call an appropriate topic here, but I was interested in watching the documentary, and I'm like, it's something I'm already interested in and something I'm passionate about, so why not just throw this odd bit of nonsense in here.
I'm sorry for making you work when you're sick, because I could have knocked out No, I couldn't have. I couldn't have knocked out Solomon. I'm still working on it. It's so fucking dense. I don't know how you guys do it. I have such an immense appreciation for the research that you guys do on a weekly basis.
If you want to do it properly, it takes a significant amount of work.
And that's the thing, is that it's like I'm just hyper focused on whether or not things are like precise enough or concise enough, you know?
Yeah, well, obviously that's not a problem that many of us are encumbered by. If you're going to hear me talk for an hour.
Or hear me talk for 2.5 about water and
furry
shit in World War II. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well. Or furry. Yeah, that is a 2-parter, so you got at least 2, maybe 3 hours worth.
People seem to have really liked your episodes there, Michael.
Yeah, it's very popular. What I will say to close this thing up on an interesting note here, it is a little striking, though, because from these horribly sort of derelict cities that we discover over here, that a few scant years later, you have what I consider to be sort of the catalyst for all this stuff moving forward, which is 1998's Blade, which I've commonly said is like the film I consider to be the thing that brought a bit of gravitas back into filmmaking, because Blade doesn't feel like a comic book movie. It just feels like a movie. So, which is another thing that people talked about with Swamp Thing when Wes Craven made it, is they said they actually didn't advertise it as a comic book film. They just made it sound like it was a horror property, and because Craven was kind of associated with that, they didn't lean into it being a comic book property at all. And so it was almost like it was a crippling sort of detriment to you if you said, like, yeah, it's a comic book. And so to go away from that and have something like Blade, which is serious, here's the thing that blew my mind. I thought there was this really giant separation between, you know, when the crap comic book films were coming out and the good stuff. 1998 saw, as you see from the list here, the release of Blade, but that was also the year Batman and Robin came out. They actually were neck and fucking neck. And I was of the opinion that it was like there were years in between, because Batman and Robin essentially crippled the industry. And that was what a lot of my rationale was based on. And it kind of did for DC, because it took a long time.
True.
They go from essentially 1998 to 2008 before you get to Batman Begins.
I'm sorry, you can't just give me a list of years and then expect me to check. So 97 was Batman and Robin, but you're not wrong that 98 was Blade, and that's close enough. It could have came out in like
years
fucking
upon
December,
years of separation.
You know? Years and years. Yeah, but no, you're absolutely fucking correct. Do you think that it was X-Men that kind of brought it back after Blade as well?
And then that is really, most people point to X-Men because, one, it's a more popular property, and it was a book that, it is a film that went out and brazenly said, yes, this is based on a comic book. But so Blade kind of hid that.
Yeah.
And so it was a little more obscured. And Blade, to its credit, had kind of more... Wesley Snipes was a bit more of a name star than Patrick Stewart. And I was talking about this with Melissa last night. I was like, Ian McKellen was not a very well-known... He was more of a stage actor. He didn't have a lot of major, like, filmic tour de force performances for American eyes that when you see him as Magneto, you're like, oh my God. But that's kind of the thing that brings him into the public consciousness, so that later on when he's Gandalf, you're not shocked.
And you know what's really funny is that I read, maybe you told it to me, Shane, but it's like an adorable Snapple fact about McKellen. And pertaining to Gandalf, is that he read, it was like a yearly tradition for him to read The Lord of the Rings, so that when he finally was going into the movie, like, I don't know, he felt at home with it.
Actually, that Christopher Lee is the Tolkienite.
God damn me.
Which
right.
Christopher Lee was actually
they both look the same to me.
Well, it's even funnier. So this is actually the exact conversation I had with Melissa, because I was saying Christopher Lee was up for Gandalf, and because he was the resident sort of Tolkienite, he actually would go out and do public readings of the Lord of the Rings and things. Cool. He was incensed that they chose Ian McKellen instead. And furthermore, Ian McKellen also played villains predominantly. So, like, between the two of them, Christopher Lee's going like, what the fuck? Like, we're both basically cut from the same cloth here, but
Interesting.
Christopher Lee is a bit more ominous. I mean, the man played Dracula, for God's sakes, and is rumored to be the individual James Bond is based on. So it makes a little more sense that you have someone who's got sort of like the panache of a Christopher Lee who plays the villain that is a scintillating role in the plot. And Gandalf needs to be kind of your wizened and kindly grandfather when he needs to be, but has the ability to turn. You can argue both of them would have been more than capable, and I would have been very interested to see Christopher Lee be Gandalf.
Yeah.
But
Well,
is what it is.
Not to be too nerdy about it, but like in Fellowship, before you get your turn on who Saruman is and Gandalf, like they both seem like part of the same crowd, and that's what
Absolutely.
they're meant to be. So like I could see him as either role.
It's one of the few redeeming like I'm any sort of cinema critic here, but it's one of the things I actually really enjoyed about The Hobbit is being able to see sort of Saruman as he's going over, but when he is still technically on the side of the white, if you will, and behaving himself appropriately.
Right.
Not completely corrupted, so it's nice to kind of be able to retract that a little when he was still the leader of the clique. But in any event, we've managed to get ourselves derailed again. But the thing that we talk about between like Blade and the X-Men, mostly they actually adopted the tone of the comic books and made it sort of safe to adapt comic concepts into cinema. And so those are the reasons why I point to those as sort of like the enzymes that got injected into the mixture that makes it more acceptable to make comic properties. And then after that, once the X-Men hit financially, everybody started buying properties, which is how you get Spider-Man, how you get the Fantastic Four films, all these other things start to kind of perk up, particularly for Marvel. But that's the thing that drives me absolutely. Like, I still could not fathom that Iron Man came out in 2008 and that it and Dark Knight were basically neck and neck. So it's like you have DC's high watermark, and then after that, Marvel just obliterates them. Really cool stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But that, I think, will bring my contributions to this evening's festivities to a close here, because otherwise I'll do this all evening. But once I started looking at that list, I was talking about it with Steven, and I was just like, yeah, I could probably sit and do this for hours, so this isn't really an episode. I don't have to try very hard to evoke some of this stuff. This is my puppy dog Michael moment.
But speaking of that, I think we only got one of your lies.
You did. But I was a little bit underhanded. I was slightly duplicitous here, but
Surprise!
Was it a number lie?
no number lies.
Is it a lie from
So-
fucking 3 years ago
No,
that you've just been peppering in as fact?
Nope.
for-
not that bad. So any other guesses before we get going here?
No, I got lost in the sauce there.
I was going to say, it like I said, with it being an unconventional show, I wasn't really trying to make these my usual seated lies.
I
But
also
firstly,
realize now that I haven't seen you in person. Almost. It'll probably
been a
be
while.
a month and a half at least. So
Uh-huh.
this just felt like setting
Catching
up,
up?
tearing. Yes,
You
the
know.
kind of the shit that we talk about
Yeah.
when we're setting up or tearing down practice or shows.
Mhm. yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
You know.
So, Michael, Courtney, no guesses, I assume? All right,
No.
then. I was cycling in and out of screens, so I didn't see your nods or dissenting head nods. But all right, so lie number one is that Wes Craven was planning to follow up the box office success of Swamp Thing by making a Doctor Strange film. The Swamp Thing 1982 film actually doesn't even have its box office numbers released to the general public. You can't find it.
Oops.
So, yeah, it was considered
Nice.
so much of a flop that they just refused to release their numbers. So you only get the numbers for the 1989 sequel to that film, but they don't have the 82 numbers up, which is hilarious.
That's
Because
awesome.
I tried to find that, and it's just not available anywhere. So, you did get number two, that Pierce Brosnan was going to star. What's even funnier, if you look back on that list, there was a Doctor Strange film produced in the 70s.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous, but I digress. Anywho, Now, lie number 3 is the fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger was in talks with Paul Verhoeven to create an Incredible Hulk film. That was not in the works at all. I peppered that.
Believable.
I also peppered it by adding in the fact that Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett were going to make it a sci-fi property, because I figured I could use that to kind of gloss over all the other things, because they did write Total Recall. Total Recall was a very successful film at the time.
Ooh, successful.
So says, yes, it was a lobster fart. And so...
What?
Had to have listened back to last week in order to catch that, friend.
Oh.
So it was a successful film. It would make sense. And because he had been in the running to be the Incredible Hulk for the television show, I can see him being upset about not doing that. So that's all just me making stuff up. And then lie number 4, I basically threw all of my lies at you in the first 10 minutes of this thing. So lie number
3 lies.
Oh shit!
Oh, there
say
was
3
a
lies?
hidden lie. I was onto something.
Oh,
man.
okay. It was so cheap that I actually I
Damn.
didn't
You
include
didn't
it.
even count
So-
it.
Tell me I'm not present again, motherfucker. Tell me I'm not present again.
It's the only thing you write down at the beginning of the show so that you can count them off on your finger when people get them, John.
Bitch, I don't even have a pen anymore.
Yeah.
Oh
Fuck off.
shit! The pen is gone.
So you'll appreciate the fact that I'm not going to hold this over your head then. So a 4th lie, for those of you who were paying attention, apparently. Shusett and O'Bannon did not write Dune for Ridley Scott.
Fucking goddamn it! I thought about saying something.
Well, so
change
technically-
the authority on this. I should just trust this motherfucker.
No, so
That's the whole point.
Dan O'Bannon was present on the production for Jodorowsky's Dune.
God damn! And I was gonna make a comment about that too, because that's another if I'm not mistaken, that's a similar story to Fantastic
Yes.
Four. It's just it's quote unquote nowhere. Was not actually theatrically released.
It wasn't even shot. They were in
got it.
pre-production, and then they let the rights cede because they weren't gonna. If you haven't seen that documentary, you need to fucking watch it.
I will.
It's phenomenally done. One, it would have been incredible to see what Jodorowsky wanted to do with it, and his casting choices alone. Particularly once you've read the books and you're familiar with the material, he was going to have Mick Jagger play Fade.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, that sounds great.
Shut the fuck up. So, anywho, to give the Michael explanation for the Ridley Scott lie, not that it matters, Dino De Laurentiis actually hired Ridley Scott in 1979. They were operating off of the Frank Herbert script that had been written, and Ridley Scott, in his hubris, along with De Laurentiis, they scrapped Frank Herbert's script and brought in Rudy Wurlitzer to write the screenplay, and then they retained H.R. Giger, who had been working on the Jodorowsky Dune,
Okay. Got it.
designing the Harkonnen homeworld of Gady Prime. And so interesting bits of nonsense there, but also Giger is one of the reasons that you do get Dan O'Bannon and Ridley Scott connected for Alien. There's a lot of weird tendrils that connect all of these films, so it's a lot of fun. So it was a very duplicitous lie for me to throw in here.
I like it.
Yep, that's it. All of that stuff, essentially that one paragraph contained the entirety of my lies for the episode. Everything else is fact.
Okay.
Nice.
Cool.
But if you get a wild hair at some point and you want to see how ghastly the film is beyond that trailer, that is a difficult movie to watch. So much so that this is something I left out because I know most of you aren't Marvel comic fans, but there is a character that is ensconced in the mythos of the Fantastic Four that is the Mole Man, which fans of The Incredibles will appreciate that the character they're lampooning with the Underminer at the end of the
Underminer, yeah.
Yes. The Underminer is a take on the Mole Man. So the Mole Man is actually a character in this Fantastic Four movie, but they changed his name to the Jeweler. because the mole man typically breaks into vaults and places that would hold jewelry, and so they basically have the mole man on screen but changed his name, and that is the character has that weird, odd, flaming poetic thing at the end of the trailer. It was like, we're the stuff of stars. Yeah, just horrific.
Also, would recommend for the listeners to watch that trailer that you showed us, which I
the link is in the show notes. You can go scope that out, as well as the Team Thor depiction of Thor, to give you an idea of what Surfer Thor would look like. But
what were you saying, Courtney?
Oh, I think I have to walk back my original answer after watching through this list, because Iron Giant, I didn't know was a superhero movie, but I grew up with that movie. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so I don't know if you read through the actual article, they had a list of criteria that they would use to determine whether or not
what's a comic and what
counts.
isn't.
Yeah.
Anime, essentially manga also counts into some of that. So yeah, there's a lot of that.
Nice.
Which I think Iron Giant was a manga, if I recall.
Most likely.
Was it?
The Iron Giant.
I did not know.
That's another one that has a huge, like, star-studded cast as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that might have been. I'm misspeaking. I think that might have actually been a children's story, but in any event, I digress.
Well, that was fun.
So there you are, friends. Thank you for going on a ride with me and for doing something a little less conventional. This wasn't very much what we would consider to be the quintessential Shane episode. This is mostly me rambling. But
I liked it.
Thank you for letting me just foam at the mouth and bloviate, as my coworkers would say.
Well, happy to listen, and thanks for letting me ramble and
that was good.
Put into question my friendship with Courtney.
But not your adoration for Jonah.
I actually am really fucking embarrassed about that. I've been thinking about it ever since I said it, because how could I forget being so aggressively stoned in front of Courtney while she was watching a horror movie while she was still not into horror movies? I don't know.
Because you were so paranoid about it that it couldn't have happened.
Yeah. Well, because in my head, when you and I were watching The Witch, your first time and my first rewatch in a while, I was like, okay, so Courtney is really, really scared of horror movies. I'm gonna get stoned so that it makes me way more scared, so that we're on an even playing field. But yeah, that was a fun time. So I'm sorry that I'm sorry I forgot.
I have a follow-up question to that, though.
What?
Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
I sure fucking do. I sure fucking do.
Man, the baby jam of that movie really screws me up.
Ugh.
That is the one thing that I still have problems watching.
Yeah.
I have a comic book question. Do we think Jeff the Land Shark is going to get a movie? Because that's all I care about.
If this is a South Park reference, I'm missing.
No, do you not know about Jeff the Land Shark from current Marvel comic books?
Apparently not.
You have to look him up. He's the cutest thing that ever existed.
I will confess, for those who are hanging out here, I have admitted previously I'm like total DC through and through. Particularly with my reading proclivities, I have very few Marvel comics on the wall.
Oh my good God!
Isn't he the
adorable?
Oh, he makes me so
I mean,
happy.
you can share the screen.
I'm
Show me what you're.
I'm about
Yeah,
to.
'cause-
Usually we share this kind of silly stuff for the After Dark.
Though I will say, Melissa
my
would also
God.
say that I was remiss if I didn't add that Squirrel Girl is her absolute favorite. So
oh
if
my
you're looking
God!
for something to check
wears
out,
a little fucking harness like Albus does.
Yeah.
oh God.
Oh my!
And if you go up, there's one of him in a floaty with like Deadpool on it.
No.
That is precious.
Oh,
That's
there we
the
go.
only Marvel
Oh my
character I
God.
care about.
For good reason.
Okay, Shane, I'll send this in our chat so you can throw this in the show notes. So that these
Okay.
if people
I'm
need
all about it.
if people need eye bleach, there you go.
Yes, you're gonna need to check that out as well.
Oh my fucking God! Thank you, Courtney. That made my night.
Uh-huh.
Well, and congratulations for hoisting me on my obviously overinflated petard here.
You're not supposed to say that anymore.
I mean, what? It's
Okay, that might be an edit.
Yeah, it's okay if you retard the dough, John. It's part of making bread.
yeah, you gotta slap it.
The best thing that that Courtney sent me lately was it was from today. She's watching a cooking show, and was it Indian cuisine?
No, it's Hawaiian.
Hawaiian. There you go.
Mhm.
And what is it?
Oh my god!
Wait. What is it, and how is it spelled? I think this is a really good exit note.
So it's spelled P-U-P-U. And it's
I thought it was Santa China's.
that's last week's favorite thing. No, so I'm sure most of you have heard of like poo-poo platters, like as Hawaiian food. And there's a chapter of a book from a chef who was on Top Chef called Heavy Poo-poos. And so she's talking about how like you don't want to miss out at a party that has heavy poo-poos. And it was just not.
I mean,
That's
do you
insensitive, but
poop
it's
out
so
at parties?
funny.
Do you drip and droop and strain?
No.
I mean, 5 foot she poop at the parties. You're not
That was
supposed
what
to
I was
poop at the
thinking.
parties. I mean, 5 foot Helen poop at the parties.
Maybe that's the spiritual successor to
carpet.
Michael's episode. It's heavy water, heavy poo poo.
I feel like that's your autobiography title, John.
Did you guys know that pee is stored in the balls?
I knew that.
Well, for the giant confederation of joke farts here, thank you all for being here for another distinguished installment of Disinformed. As per usual, if you love and appreciate what we've got going on here, you can show us in myriad ways, not the least of which being like and subscribe. Give us a little rate and review if you would be so inclined. And we would love to hear from you. Of course, you can find us on all of the socials. The link is in the show notes below. You can also find us every wonderful week that we elect to take a little time on the tubes of you for some Disinformed After Dark, and I believe we might have a little scintillating foray into that nonsense for you if John is able to sit through it and shit through it.
Don't hate me. My schedule changed.
I'm about to schedule your ass right now. But and also, of course, you can find our new episodes here every Marvelous Monday. It's a delightful thing. And of course, we got TikToks. Courtney's just killing it over there. And we've got the occasional post on Twitter, which, bless Michael.
We had them for like
tried.
a week and now we're done. That was it.
Yeah, I was like the did you know? Well, it's funny when you post 2 times a day and then the only people that like respond to it are people that are on this call.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll react to like trending things because those usually get like 200 views according to Twitter telling me that. So I'm like, but I'm not going to do things on like politics that are like, or like COVID or sports because I know shit about sports. So I'm like, that's all that trends on Twitter nowadays. So I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, it's a shit platform, and I've always hated it. But, I'm the one who doesn't like it here, so what are you going to do? Furthermore, I do have to question, and I'm not trying to inject more time into this episode, but Michael, what the fuck did you do to our Google AdSense so that we're now censured for now and forevermore?
So I was like, you know what? You can choose how many dollars you want to put in per day. So I was like, I'll do $2 a day on a Google ad that's just like, hey, come check out our podcast page on Podbean. I did all the stuff. I got pictures. I made it nice. I came up with headlines. I submitted it. 5 minutes later, suspended for suspicious payment activity. I put in my own card. Google has my card saved through my account, so I don't have to type it in every time. They should know it's associated with me. So they're like, nah, it's suspended. I appealed it. They said, no, fuck you. So I'm like, all right, fine. Instead of doing it on Disinformed's Gmail, I'll do it on my own Gmail. Same fucking thing. I guess they don't want us to fucking like advertise on that. So I was very upset.
This is a show that is predicated on lies, Michael, and you're curious why anybody would consider us to have suspicious activities surrounding us.
And also,
It was payments activity. That was the thing.
So, well, you did have to censure your stepdaughter from purchasing pornography, so, it's one of those difficult hills to climb. So thank you for ruining any possibility of us ever making money through all of your exploits. You basically just shot yourself in the foot there, friend.
You're doing terrific.
Just through Google Ads, though. There's other methods.
well, Michael, for $2 a day, you can feed a starving child. I think you have one downstairs that you could start with, and then maybe we can branch out from there.
Yeah.
Nah,
Oh.
that sounds like effort.
Well,
From,
that
She knows how to hunt.
From what her mother says, she real thirsty, so, you can also worry about that,
My
too.
God.
All right, well, ladies and germaphobes, thank you for enduring some of our collective housekeeping here. It's appreciated as always. So I believe that is going to wrap this rascal up like a rubber around a dolphin dick. And so for the Disinformed podcast this week, I'm Shane.
I'm John.
I'm Michael.
I'm Courtney.
And zippity zoop, we're out of here.
9. Hey!